Hi, everybody. Today I am coming to you from southern Germany, and I'm at the Kuseberg, a fortress built in the 1100s, which is a perfect location to talk about our topic today, resilience, and the fact that it's not what you think, not at all. And I'm so confident about this that by the end of this podcast, I believe you'll be looking at resilience with a totally different mindset. Because the truth is, at some point, life is going to ask you to be resilient. Not in some Hollywood kind of way with a big music swell and a comeback moment, but in your real life, when something unexpected changes the path you thought you were on. This is a Karen Shaw podcast. I'm Karen Shaw. Let's get started. I'll be honest with you. I did not plan to do this episode on resilience, at least not now. But right now, I'm in Germany visiting my husband's family. And just a few days after I arrived, I noticed something strange. Almost every book that had been recommended to me lately or given to me, two of them right when I got here, was set in wartime. World War I, World War II, and one about the Vietnam War. Here's the thing. I've never really read books about war before. Not fiction, not nonfiction, nothing. And yet suddenly, I had 7 books all set in times of war. Books I had finished, listened to, or was still reading. It made me stop and think, what are the odds of this happening? Here I am in a country shaped so deeply by war, visiting a family whose lives were forever changed by it, and I'm surrounded by stories of people pushed right up against the limits of what a person can bear. And what stands out to me in every single one of these stories is not the shiny, dramatic resilience we usually celebrate in movies or history books. It's something quieter. It's a kind of resilience that shows up in ordinary moments, taking one step forward when the future feels impossible, or holding on when everything inside you wants to give up. It's not loud, it's not glamorous, but it's steady. And it runs like a thread through all of these stories. That's the resilience we're talking about today. The quiet thread of resilience that runs through ordinary lives. The books that brought me here are filled with examples like these. Families torn apart, still finding ways to love. Children forced to grow up too soon. Women carrying impossible burdens in silence. Men returning from war alive, but never the same. People who endured hunger, danger, fear, and yet still found small ways to care for one another. And these aren't polished, triumphant stories. They're messy. They're complicated. They're stories of ordinary people trying to hold on in extraordinary circumstances. And in that way, they feel close to us. Because when we talk about resilience here, it isn't just about characters on a page. It's about human beings, people like us, who remind us that resilience doesn't always look like triumph. Sometimes it looks like getting through the day. Sometimes it looks like holding pain quietly. Sometimes it looks like carrying scars you never asked for and still showing up for life. And that kind of resilience isn't only something from history. We see it all around us today. In many ways, our modern examples mirror those dramatic moments from the past. Different circumstances, different scale, but the same thread of human strength runs through them, all of them. It's a single parent working 2 jobs and still showing up for their kids. It's the friend caring for an aging parent while holding down a full-time job. It's a person recovering from illness or loss who still finds a way to keep going. It's neighbors helping each other after a flood, a storm, a fire. It's a teenager balancing school while quietly carrying responsibilities far beyond their years. It's a coworker who shows up with kindness even while struggling silently at home. The settings change, but the essence is the same. Choosing to keep going, even when it's hard. Doing what needs to be done, even when you wish you didn't have to. Finding small ways to care for others, even while carrying your own burdens. So let's take a moment and talk about what science actually says about resilience. In psychology, resilience is often defined as the ability to adapt in the face of adversity, trauma, or stress, while still holding on to some kind of balance. Some people call it bouncing back. But let's be honest, bouncing back doesn't always feel right, does it? Because there are some things you don't bounce back from. Some things change you. Some losses leave marks. And yet you still move forward. You still get up. You still find a way to live. That's resilience. Now, here's where the research gets really interesting. Psychologists often talk about two kinds of resilience. There's a high-intensity kind, the resilience people call on when life throws something huge at them, a war, a natural disaster, the death of someone you love, a major illness or injury. These are the moments that shake your world and force you to adapt in ways you never imagined. And then there's everyday resilience, the kind we use all the time, usually without even noticing it. It shows up in the daily struggles, work pressure, family conflict, health worries, breakups, even just the stress of a long day. Both matter. Both keep us moving. And science shows us that even in the worst of circumstances, resilience is possible. There's a 2025 study in Palestine, people living right in the middle of war. What researchers found was that those people who had strong resilience and especially strong support systems were able to sleep better, think more clearly, and protect themselves from some of the long-term damage of trauma right in the middle of war. Other studies have found something called post-traumatic growth, the idea that even after enormous pain, people can sometimes grow new strengths, new perspectives, even new hope. That doesn't mean that suffering disappears. It means that alongside the suffering, something new can take root. And here's the part I really want you to hear. Resilience isn't rare. It's not something only the strongest or bravest people have. Psychologist Ann Maston calls it ordinary magic. She says it's built into us. It's a basic human capacity. And when you think about it, you've probably lived it yourself. Resilience might have looked like showing up to work with a broken heart. It might have looked like making dinner when you had no energy left. We can all identify with that, right? It might have looked like laughter through tears or silence that carried years of unspoken history. That's resilience too. So yes, the research gives us these categories and words: flourishing, adaptation, post-traumatic growth, ordinary magic. But science only goes so far. What really brings resilience to life are the people we know, the stories we carry. For me, that starts close to home. In World War II, my husband's family had to leave their home within hours. No warning, just go. The family were separated, some were imprisoned. They lost everything, and yet they found ways to rebuild. They raised families, they created new lives. But those early losses, that sudden upheaval, it never really disappeared. That kind of trauma becomes part of a person's story, and in turn, part of their family's story. I think of my uncle who was shot down over Germany and spent time in a prisoner of war camp. He made it home. He lived a full life, but there were things he never talked about. You could feel the weight in his silence. And he wasn't the only one. Men and women like him carried their pain quietly, without sharing it, without asking for help. They just kept going. Silence may not have been the healthiest way to cope, but it was still resilience. Because resilience doesn't always look like strength. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's hidden. And yet it still shows up in the simple fact that they endured, that they kept moving forward when life gave them every reason to stop. Their way of surviving still mattered. And I've had my own share of life-changing moments, like so many of you. I've faced seasons I didn't choose, times when everything changed overnight, and I had no choice but to adapt. And for some, that might look like losing someone you love. For others, it's starting over after a broken relationship or a lost job. or simply getting out of bed in the morning during the season when life feels unbearably heavy. Whatever it was, we kept going. And that quiet act of continuing, that's resilience. When we started, I told you that by the end, you might see resilience differently. I hope you do. Resilience doesn't always mean a heroic comeback or a triumphant return. It's not always dramatic or loud. Sometimes it's barely visible. Maybe now you can start to see it in your own life, in the quiet ways you've kept going, in the pain you've carried without needing to explain, in the moments you stayed present, even when it would have been easier to disappear. If you've ever said, I don't know how I made it through that, you've lived resilience. If you've ever known someone who was suffering, but still showed up with kindness, you've seen resilience. If you've ever watched someone carry pain quietly while still offering love to others, that too is resilience. And maybe now with a deeper understanding, you'll give yourself a little more grace for what you've endured. You'll recognize strength in others, not in how loudly they speak about their pain, but in the quiet ways they've held on. You might even start to see resilience everywhere, in the silence, in the showing up, and the choice to keep going. And remember, resilience might not always look like strength, but it is. If this material has resonated with you today, please click on the like button, and I would love to have you subscribe. I promise you, I will not waste your time with fluff. This has been the Karen Shaw Podcast. I'm Karen Shaw. Thank you for being here.